welcome to the video. So we're going to take a look at a financial situation here that I first saw a couple days ago when I was scrolling through Reddit. And this one stood out to me, not because it's some horrible case of financial doom, but because it's a very real financial situation that could pretty much happen to any of us if we aren't careful with the planning stage. So if you enjoy this type of content, please let me know, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more like this in the future. So the original Reddit post here is titled, "I'm in a really bad financial situation and I'm not sure how to get out of it." So here's the post. I'm 28 years old and I went back to school to work on my master's degree. When I graduated from college 4 years ago, I moved back in with my family and it was a complete and total nightmare, but I got a job working as a teacher since my degree was in social science. I was making about $45,000 a year and not paying rent, so it was nice, but me and my family did not get along whatsoever. I went to a university 3.5 hours away and stupidly took out a private student loan. While I was going to school there, they gave me money to help pay for my expenses throughout the semester, so I didn't have to work and I was living by myself and away from my family. So last summer, I decided to transfer programs to another university that's close to where I grew up. The only issue is that they gave me a lot less money to support myself and my rent was higher where I moved because everyone wants to live there. So I knew I had to work. I interviewed for another teaching job, but it didn't fit with my school schedule, and it was a 2-hour commute each day. The second job I tried to get was at my university, but I got flaked on the salary at the last minute, and it was much less than I anticipated, and not enough for me to support myself. The third job I tried to take was as a child protective investigator, but I didn't take it because my boss told me that she can't guarantee my safety, and I may have guns pulled on me, walking on meth being cooked in the ghetto, and she knew someone who was ran over, and also that I wasn't allowed to carry a weapon to defend myself. That's exciting. That was just too much for me. So I did some budgeting and I figured out that I needed to make around $47,000 to $50,000 a year full time in order for me to live in the situation that I'm in right now. The problem is I don't have a lot of professional experience, just educational experience, so I keep getting rejected for jobs that I'm applying for. At the moment, I'm working as a substitute teacher, which does not pay a lot of money, but it's all that I got right now. I know I made some ill-advised decisions, but I just want to get my life back on track and stabilize myself financially. The one thing I will never do again is live with my parents. It had a horrible impact on my mental health, and they are extremely emotionally abusive and narcissistic. I would rather live on the streets than live with them again. Okay, so a pretty common scenario these days. A person wants to go to college, but realizes money is tight. Living with parents is no longer an option because it's a bad home life environment. Okay, so maybe we could look at a few objective truths here before we unpack some sort of complicated plan and just start trying to change everything. So first in the initial paragraph, this person mentioned that they were making around $45,000 a year and not having to pay any rent. Financially, that's really not a bad start to adult life. They also mentioned that living at home was a real struggle and that they didn't really get along with their family members at all. So while the financial situation is probably going to get a little bit worse for the time being, I can certainly understand wanting to leave a bad home life behind. So I don't fault this person for that choice at all. So that being said, there may have been a better way to go about this plan than having to go back to school to get another degree and taking out expensive private loans along the way. Maybe progressing at that teaching job that they had before and trying to bump up that level of responsibility and skill set that they had might help them get an even higher paying job down the line. Now, like the OP said, the home life or home environment was pretty terrible, so pretty much they were going to have to move no matter what. But maybe they could have just moved a little bit closer to their job instead of having to move, hours away just to go back to college. And maybe they could have also gotten a roommate or two just to help with that financial burden that comes with having to rent alone. So that's one possible idea. So moving on to another objective truth from this person's post. So after OP went back to college for their master's degree, they transferred to a more expensive college that was closer to home. So to me, this is where issue number 2 comes into play. So obviously they mentioned that the home life with the parents wasn't good and the money was also getting increasingly tight. So the solution was to move closer to home and then also spend more money. So maybe I'm overlooking something here, but that sort of seems like the opposite of what OP was actually looking for. And not to mention, the move to the new apartment was going to be more expensive than the old apartment that they were originally living in. So again, we seem to be prioritizing short-term comfort over making some sort of long-term plan and sticking to it. So a few more things that I think we need to cover before we build this guy a plan. So first, OP mentioned at one of the job interviews that he attended that I got flaked on the salary at the last minute and it was much less than I anticipated and not enough for me to support myself. So I'm not necessarily saying that OP wasn't prepared for this interview, but I'm a little suspicious that this unfolded the way that OP is suggesting that it did. And I get that a lot of companies are absolutely terrible to work for and some of them tend to curve the truth a little bit, but I've had quite a few job interviews myself and I've never had somebody try to lower the his salary last minute, especially after I was already aware of the range that we were talking about. OP makes it seem like they were given a range of like 50 or 60 grand, but at the end of the interview, they were just like, nope, 30 grand, take it or leave it. And again, I'm not saying that that definitely didn't happen, but I would be a little skeptical of that. So more likely than not, OP probably just guessed what the range for the job was probably supposed to be without actually talking to the interviewer beforehand, and was surprised when it was lower than expected. So the last point I want to cover before we jump into a solution for this is this. So here's a line from OP's text. I did some budgeting and I figured out that I need to make around $47,000 to $50,000 per year in order for me to live in the situation that I'm in right now. The problem is I don't have a lot of professional experience, just educational experience. So 2 thoughts on this, Mr. OP. You were making about $45,000 a year before you even started this back to education journey, so your earning potential is already there, which kind of makes me wonder how hard you're actually looking for employment. And I know some of these interviews that they didn't really end well, but it's just something that caught my attention. The other point I wanted to make was you said you didn't have a lot of professional experience, only educational experience, and I would disagree. So you've worked multiple teaching jobs in the past, and you've managed to earn a salary that was really close to your current goal of that $47,000 to $50,000 a year. So maybe you don't want to be a teacher anymore. I don't believe you said what the new degree that you're going for was actually in, but teaching is a very real profession, especially if you teach in a particular niche. And you've shown that you can do exactly that. So I would not doubt your ability to earn enough money to actually pull yourself out of this situation. So with the limited amount of information that we have from this post, here's a short list of what I would do if I had to switch positions with you tomorrow. So first, and this is by far the most important step, I would spend considerable amount of time over the next couple days figuring out what I want my internal compass to be. Meaning, we don't want to waste time every single day having to make these tiny little decisions about exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Instead, if we figure out what that internal compass is that directs our daily decision making, we can eventually kind of just get to the point where we can trust the process, so to speak. Because most of our small decisions will have already been made through that internal compass. So whether this is just through listening to a few podcasts or reading some self-help books or spending time meditating, I would figure out exactly what I want my internal compass to look like so I can make all my decisions through that lens going forward. So easier said than done, but absolutely necessary not to lose your mind through internal conflict every day. So that's what I would do first, is establish that internal compass. So next we have to actually start cleaning up this mess a little bit. So I don't know exactly where this person is in their academic journey, but it better be pretty close to the end or I'm going to strongly consider pulling out of that additional education and instead pursuing an avenue to make myself more money. So if they still have another 2 years of college and that degree that they're going to get isn't going to pay them like 6 figures right out of the bat, you could consider me going. Right? We have to start attacking that debt at some point, and right now we're moving the needle the wrong way. So the short-term goal here is to correct your finances so that you can feel stable and secure. And I'll leave whatever those longer-term goals are up to the OP. Next, I would adjust your expectations for your next job. So I'm not saying to get a terrible job that pays you $4 an hour, but I also wouldn't be so willing to pass up on all these job opportunities and job interviews. So I know you had some reasons for passing up those last couple job opportunities, but I would also try to be considerably less picky in the future. Now, another useful tip that I'll mention, and this goes for anybody interviewing for any job ever, and I've always done very well at job interviews because of this, you have to come prepared. Ideally, more prepared than what you think the interview requires. So that might mean that you research the company and figure out what their mission statements and values are, and then one of probably the most important things is to come up with your own list of questions that you would ask if you were the one that was conducting that interview. And now you got to come up with really well thought out answers to those questions. And I promise this will help you tremendously, especially if you've never done this before. And also, you got to have like 3 to 5 questions of your own that you plan on asking. So the interviewer always, or at least should always, ask if you have questions at the end. Please do not sit there in silence with nothing to say. So come up with a couple questions that can't just be easily answered by hopping on the company website and looking at the very top. And then really pay attention to the answers that your interviewer gives you. So this is where you show your thought processes and your engagement to your interviewer, and this process can really end up mattering a lot. Now, I know this might be a little bit more broad feedback than what OP might specifically be looking for, but getting better at job interviews should absolutely be at the very top of OP's list. So lastly, unless that degree that you're going back for is going to make you considerably more money in the near future, I would at least consider putting additional education on hold and trying to make some lifestyle changes. So you said you need $47,000 to $50,000 per year to maintain your current lifestyle. So I'm glad that you're concerned enough with your situation to know those details, but Why do you need to maintain your current lifestyle? You don't have to live there. You can get roommates, and you can certainly get a job. Anyway, if you're able to find a decent job and start picking up extra hours, you could probably turn that $45,000 into $50,000 or $60,000 pretty easily without a ton of additional work. And if you were also able to spend maybe $500 or $600 less per month, then you free up another $6,000 per year, and you're well on your way to paying off more of your debt and starting to move the needle in the right direction, so that you're not just racking up more debt, but you're actually starting to pay it off. So anyway, I know a lot of these adjustments can be easier said than done, but you'll be in a much better spot if you can start making these adjustments earlier in the process. And I know I've beat this dead horse a few times already, but unless your new college degree is going to land you a really high-paying job, I would seriously wonder if now's the right time to go back for more education. Alright, to close things out, let's just look at a few of these comments. So the first guy says, what are you studying in your master's degree? I may have missed it. Is there a particular reason you have returned to school? Are you looking to stay in education or do something else? You were making 45 grand before, so I guess my question is, can you do that again? It sounds like you're trying to make this much money while also going back to school full time, which raises the question, if loans are helping pay living expenses and your loan payments aren't due yet, can you break down your expenses further? Correct me if I'm wrong, and instead you're trying to make $45,000 post-graduation. If you're really struggling, are you actually getting value out of this degree? Any interest in putting it on pause or no longer pursuing it? Because again, you were making $45,000 before, which seems to be what you were trying to achieve. So yeah, that's pretty much the point I was trying to hit home also. Seems like OP was already doing fine with money before actually going back to college. Alright, we'll read one more. So this commenter says, it seems like the obvious solution is more money. Getting hired and on board a job is going to take several weeks, even under the best circumstances. I know that UPS will hire absolutely anyone, so I would go that route if I were you. I worked as a package loader to pay my rent, and I'm a woman. Good thing about UPS is the loader positions are only 5 hours a night, and you get full healthcare coverage. Also, movie theaters are really easy places to get jobs, and if you have a reliable vehicle, you could do Instacart. Okay, I'm not sure how helpful that is. It doesn't seem like OP is really struggling to find job offers, but more like they're just struggling to find a job that they really want. So seeing as how OP didn't mention wanting to work for UPS or a movie theater, I would say that's somewhat irrelevant feedback. Anyway, that'll do it for this video. So this was just an intro into covering people's financial situations. So I got to do a fair bit of this in college, and honestly, it's kind of become sort of a passion of mine, just to like take a deep dive into people's personal finance and to see what improvements could be made. I am nosy, but I do genuinely like helping people out. Hopefully this was entertaining and useful to you. So if you have a financial situation that you want me to cover, feel free to either put a story like this in the comment section, or you could just send it to my email that I have listed in the video description. So I have about 73 subscribers at the time of recording this, so if you want to see more similar to this, I post videos every Sunday, and I would really appreciate you subscribing. So thanks for checking this video out. I do look forward to hearing from some of you. Have a great day. P.S. If you have longer submissions, I'd be happy to do a much deeper dive into your financial situation instead of this pretty surface level conversation that we had today. So if that interests you, just send me your info and you can tell me whether you want to stay anonymous or not. Thanks again.